We are live here on Sunday morning. Welcome. I have brought our panel together today. Jeff Garvin, author of Symptoms of Being Human. Rene Bordelon, actress and singer. Dan Zarzana, blogger over at bookthump.com. And for the first time today, actress and singer Jessica Hayes. There we go. So welcome. Today we are having our weekly discussion about imposter syndrome. And this is actually a suggestion from panelist Garvin. And I want to start with a disclaimer. First of all, none of us are qualified professional doctors or psychologists. We are not clinical psychologists. Everything that we are talking about today is an examination of our own experiences, thoughts, and feelings on it. And so none of this should be taken as a way to diagnose yourself or as definitive suggestions about how to handle this situation. Syndrome is a word that carries a lot of weight. So if you do feel like you have some kind of significant issue, please seek out professional psychological help. That being said, today we are going to talk about all of the ways that that we personally have felt like maybe we don't deserve the things that we get, or maybe we don't belong in the places where we belong. And even though Mr. Garvin suggested this topic, I almost feel like you're the person who shouldn't be here, sir.
Well, I always like to start a panel by having the moderator tell me to seek professional help. That's always good. On the contrary, I think it's perfect that I'm here. I think I have a lot to contribute to this conversation, hopefully.
Perfect. Well, why don't you start? What got you thinking about what got you to this? I mean, it was lightning quick. When I asked for suggestions about topics, you suggested this really quickly, and it's a good one. It's something that Jessica and I used to talk about backstage at Teatro Martini when we were both still there. It's something that Dan and I have talked about privately. It's something that Rene and I have spoken about. I mean, it's definitely an undercurrent of people who seek to work in the creative fields. But what brought it to your attention that made you want to talk about it in the first place? And Jessica, you may want to mute yourself just because we're hearing a lot of steaming foam.
Got it.
Well, maybe first we should define what imposter syndrome is for the people watching who may not be familiar with it.
I think that's a wonderful idea.
I'll take a crack. So imposter syndrome is essentially a pervading feeling that you don't belong, that you're not good enough, and that whatever it is you have or that you're attempting, you have a sense of feeling like you're a fake, or that you're not qualified to accomplish. And the thing about this syndrome that's fascinating is that some of the most famous actors, writers, directors, performers you can think of have suffered from this. And in fact, the quote that inspired me was Dan posted it. It was the quote from Neil Gaiman about listening to Neil Armstrong talk and say he felt like he didn't belong, and Neil Gaiman going, "Wow, if Neil Armstrong was a man who walked on the moon and he doesn't feel accomplished, then maybe it's not a real. Maybe my doubts are just as ridiculous." Did I lose you?
No, I got you.
I have to mute.
Okay, so for me, having had a long run of several different careers, the feeling like a fake is something that has reared its ugly head many, many times. And the book that helps me combat it the most, and I'll just pull it off the shelf right now, is the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, in which he actually characterizes that feeling of doubt as a force, a negative force called resistance with a capital R. And resistance is that whatever you're trying to do, whether it's lose weight, get abs, read more, join a volunteer group, or create some piece of art, resistance is the thing that rises up to stop you. And it manifests itself in a million ways. You know, you don't want to get out of bed, or really important things come up and you're suddenly cleaning your apartment instead of sitting down to write your novel. But the great thing about resistance, and I think this is true of imposter syndrome too, is it can help you navigate. Because if something's worth doing and it's a stretch, it's a risk for you, it's taking you out of your comfort level, that fear that you feel, you can use that as navigation. You can say, oh, I'm scared of this, therefore that's what will challenge me, therefore that's what I should be doing.
I could agree with that. I know in my own experience, it was similar, and I watched a lot of the heads nod in the panel as you mentioned The War of Art. I think all of us who have read it can't help but suggest that book enough, because it is such a powerful way to help define the things that are stopping you and help you identify them so that you can get past them. And getting past the hurdles is definitely one of the best ways to be able to do that.
I was going to suggest it as well, but I was going to suggest it in conjunction with the book You Are a Badass, which is also about getting past imposter syndrome. But it also goes it's a different tactic in that it takes you more along the lines of how you got these kind of subconscious thoughts in your head to begin with that might be stopping you from doing things. And it's been really interesting. And the exercises I've been doing with it, trying to figure out like, why don't I think that I deserve this? Or what am I afraid of if this were to happen, kind of a thing, has been pretty enlightening. I mean, I think I always kind of knew it. It's just one of those things that you have to actually write it out and see it or speak it out loud to really acknowledge that that's what's holding you back. So I was going to say that those two together, I think, are a great pairing for this kind of thing.
I just want to acknowledge that for the first 5 minutes that I was talking, my lower third had the word author spelled wrong.
Man, you're a fake.
Proving that I am
fake writer.
Maybe I should read the book that Rene just suggested. No, it's funny. You know, Rene, you talked about, you read it and you kind of already know it. It's like telling you stuff you don't know. And that's a perfect description of what, self-help and motivational books are like. It's like, if knowing it could somehow empower you to defeat that feeling, everyone who went to the Barnes & Noble self-help section would be a successful artist, right? There's some thing inside you that goes, yeah, I know this, but there's a membrane of knowing and, like actually absorbing and implementing. That's the difference between insight and transformation. And I think that reading these books, in particular, War of Art and the book that you mentioned, tell me the title again.
You Are a Badass.
You Are a Badass is the idea that you will always confront those demons every time you attempt to do something. But publishing a book getting an agent didn't banish the doubt. Publishing a book didn't banish the doubt. Speaking in front of hundreds of people didn't banish the doubt. Finishing my second book didn't banish the doubt. But the doubt persists. It's the one thing about doubt or feeling like a fake, is it persists. And really the question is, how are you going to manage it?
Yeah, I think that's part of why I think The War of Art is a good book. Once you've identified what your triggers are from You Are a Badass, then you read The War of Art and you go, oh, these are steps I can take to really conquer this, because I think he does a really good job of kind of saying, okay, so you've got these things, great, you got to do it anyway. And I think that is what all of us know. There's that the quote, be afraid, do it anyway, fail harder, all of those things. They're all true and we all know them, but it's still hard to take those steps to do it. And it comes down to, in The War of Art, the discipline of making yourself just set out to do it and doing it every day. And, you are what you do. And so if you just keep doing it, then eventually it becomes this thing that you created step by step. So So yeah, I mean, I agree completely that you have to take steps. Just knowing doesn't do anything. That now you know, but then you still have to get past it and take action.
Yeah, I think getting used to or becoming accustomed to feeling uncomfortable and recognizing the psychological impact of perpetual uncertainty and learning how to manage that is the single most important thing they could teach in art school. Because since I have transitioned from somebody who did art in their free time to somebody who now does it for a living, and if I don't finish it, I don't get paid and I don't pay my bills. That is absolutely the skill that is, I have refocused all of my energy. Well, not all of it. Most of my energy has not gone into, can I be a better writer? It's how can I manage this? How can I manage the psychology that now assaults me on a daily basis? Because the great thing about a day job where someone else is in charge and you show up at 9 and you leave at, in Dan's case, midnight or 1 a.m. The great part about that is that you're not the impetus. It's easy to show up and it's easy to leave. And what I mean by that is that's an automatic given thing that's going to happen. Whereas when your livelihood is all something that you push up the mountain, it's very easy to go, man, I have a sink that's not working. I should really repair that sink. And there's no one going, hey, get back to your desk. Like, why are you're not at work? Like, there's no one beating you with that stick. That is a skill that I didn't know I needed to develop until I had to develop it. And fear will manifest itself as, you should really go fix that sink. Because what you're really doing is, oh my God, I don't want to stare at a blank screen, right? That's the real thing that's going on. But it manifests itself as, wow, that backyard looks I'm looking at my backyard right now. It looks really bad. I should really get out there and fix it or whatever, But the pressure is just as bad when you're working a full-time job and you're trying to do it in your free time. Because now there you are and you have 2 hours in your day to get your stuff done. And instead you're like, wow, I should really do some laundry.
For sure. In every way that you are talking about it, it's I could remember and identify, and I feel like all these memories are flooding back.
Are they lighting the corners of your mind?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But I think the primary identifier there is fear. It is the underlying thing. It is the thing that will overwhelm any better sense that you have. It is that powerful emotion that sits in your lizard brain and will make you retreat even when everything else that you're doing is pushing you toward whatever goal you're trying to achieve. And trying to add personal context to this, I've never really doubted what I wanted to do. I've benefited from the privilege of knowing what I've wanted and essentially being able to do it for a majority of my life. But Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a pretty defining point in my life, one of those big definers. And it was the first time that I ever felt this feeling of, shit, am I really good enough to be here and to be doing this? And who do I talk to? And how does this all work? And what a weird time to have that happen in, because it was my early 20s when all of a sudden, not only was I on a very popular show and with really nice people, but I had a lot of money and the ability to self-medicate myself, which kind of took it down a bad road at a time when I was probably at the most vulnerable to experience that. And although it led to a few years of having to get myself back on a better road, I have found that since then, being able to face that I don't want to call it a failure, but it was a pretty significant trip and fall. And mind you, it's not even public. Like, this is probably the first time anybody's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What happened?
It can be very humiliating.
Yeah.
When you're presented with success on a certain level and you discover that you're not ready to handle it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you've dreamed of doing for so long, right? And then there you are on the set, or there you are you know, on the tour bus or in front of an audience of 300 people at some college that's paying you money to perform for them, and you go, oh God, I'm not ready. That's humiliating. It's embarrassing because it's you, up until that point, your experience is, give me the opportunity, give it to me. I'm ready. Give it to me. You know, Ben, I am ready. And then, you know, they put you on stage and you go, oh God, I'm not ready. And it's terrible. It's terrifying to it's almost like the reverse of imposter syndrome. But that's when it really starts to set in, you know? Yeah. And of course you are ready, right?
Well, and that's the thing. And because of that, it's going to take something pretty significant for me to not feel ready for something again at this point. Now everything feels easy. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily that it is easy. It's just that now it's like, well, you didn't screw that up. You got through it. It's kind of nice being on a roller coaster where you have no control. You know what I mean? Where you're forced to face it and kind of pushed through that scenario, because if there's no escape route, if you are pushed down the abattoir and forced through the slaughterhouse, you may come out a little battered and beaten, but you know how to navigate it after the fact. Jessica, your most recent blog post, actually, and remind me of the name of your blog again, please.
It's yoursaddragon.com.
Yes. And in that, you have a conversation with that inner dragon that's trying to defeat you, like straight up. So how does this manifest for you?
It tends to rear its ugly head mostly when I'm very exhausted, when I don't have the sort of mental energy to deal with it. If I'm overwhelmed by a lot of things, it manifests itself in self-hatred, body dysmorphia, and in the middle of the night. I can be in a perfectly fine, happy little state. Everything's going well. I'm on top of things. I'm on top of projects. I'm feeling good. And then suddenly my brain goes, you are incredibly overweight. You are not achieving the goals you were setting out to do. And so I have to either blog or journal or do something to get it out, to deal with it. So that's kind of the whole purpose of that blog. Yeah.
Kind of a self-therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and
pardon all of the steaming milk.
No, it sounds much better. It sounds much better now.
Yeah. Okay, good.
And Dan, I mean, I'm not trying to call you out or put you on blast or anything, but I know this is something that you've discussed in your creative life since we were in high school. Like, are you still feeling it? Is that something that you still have to deal with?
Yeah, daily. Every time I write an article for my site, I sit there and I stew over it for probably much longer than I ought to before I decide, is this even good enough to put out into the world? I'm constantly worried about anything that I'm writing is worth reading. That's a fear that it sounds like a lot of us are sharing. It's also, I think, part of imposter syndrome is a sense of, or a refusal to accept your accomplishments or to recognize your own accomplishments. And I think it's important to remember, while you're dealing with these self-doubts, you're in the position you're in and you're doing what you're doing because somebody believed in you. You know, somebody cast you on Sabrina, and Jeff, somebody bought your first book because they believed in it and they thought that they could sell it, or at least sell you as a writer. What?
The selling me part, that was a different career. Website, that's not in my lower third.
Yeah, let's keep that one under wraps.
No, Dan, you just said something that really triggered me, which is the word, you know, the phrase accepting your accomplishment. I think, and I know it's already 11:20, but maybe we can move into, maybe starting with Dan, talking about how you get over it? What tools do you have to fight it, to get past that
Right.
and actually click post or query your novel to agents or walk out on stage?
Yeah, and I think one of those important things is having a peer group, because by that peer group can be a support group. They can be your first instance that, hey, these people like being around me, so there must be something about me that's worthwhile. Find a mentor, whether you are an author or a actor, singer, dancer like Jessica and Rene, or me in my own professional career. I mean, I'm presenting myself as bookthump.com here, but that doesn't earn money for me. I make my living as a manager at a company that is one of the largest of what it does in the world. And we are growing fast. And so I'm in the position I'm in right now is very difficult. And I am constantly feeling like I don't belong in this job. This is way beyond me. I shouldn't be here. Somebody else could do a better job. I should resign. And my director has been he's been a mentor to me the entire time I've been with the company, but he's always been a very calming force. And even though I see he himself dealing with imposter syndrome, he'll talk to me himself about some of the issues that he feels like he is lost at sea and doesn't know what he's doing and how he's going to get through his day because he's got so much to do. And so a mentor can be a very helpful if you can find one.
Mentors and peer groups. Those are two good weapons. I think my chief weapon is I have to remind myself why I'm doing it. And so part of that is getting on about what I like about the job of being a writer. And a lot of it, I won't lie, is hearing that people like the book, whether it's strangers or friends or people. And then ironically, of course, they tell me they like it. And then I sort of undervalue that, or someone will write me and tell me that a total stranger, that they were moved by my book. So part of it is taking those moments and accepting and pinning up those, printing those emails out and putting them on the wall. But then the other part is realizing that I don't have control over how people respond to what I do. I really don't. I can do my best to guess what would be satisfying, but really I have to focus on, I get to sit behind a keyboard and make stuff up, and I really enjoy that most of the time. The other part of the time where I'm not enjoying it, I'm loathing it with a deep and powerful hatred. But for the most part, that juice is why I do it, and I get that, and I have to focus on that. So I can still do that and feel like a fake. So if you're an actor, once you're out on the stage, all that stuff kind of goes away. So it's just kind of like getting through the BS of those feelings to get on stage so you can get the juice, and accept it. So for me, it's, accepting acknowledgement, focusing on the thing that I'm actually doing that gives me the satisfaction, and then recognizing that feeling isn't going away and just acting in spite of.
I think a big thing that keeps me from folding under the pressure of a lot is what I like to call having a bit of a DGAF attitude, which is the don't give an F to keep it family safe. But while that's like clever and like has a fun little nickname, what it really is for me is being able to actually understand the stakes of what I'm doing versus what it actually means in the rest of the world. You know what I mean? I really enjoy the day job that I have. It is with good people. It is, and while it is a primary moneymaker for me financially, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty small. It's pretty easy. If for some reason something weren't to get done that day, the world is not going to end. Somebody might be upset, but maybe they need to reprioritize. You know what I mean? Things get a little bit bigger when you're handling millions of dollars of somebody else's money and you're making a project. But even then, you know, it's important to make sure that what is truly at stake is understood versus how big you make it in your mind. Because it is very simple to be able to turn the smallest things into very important things. One thing that I have noticed in my own anecdotal experience with people that I've worked with, people that I've managed, and just people in general, is that our brains will find things to make important so that we feel like we're doing something important. And I don't think there's ever been anyone that I've ever encountered or met who hasn't wanted to do something that they felt is important. And so your brain will make whatever you're doing the most important thing that there is, so that it can satisfy that itch. Again, not a clinical psychologist. This is anecdotal evidence from just being around a lot of people over a long time. But if you really do break down what it is you're doing, and I will use the example of the show that Jessica is currently in right now as a premium example of this, it is a fun show. It has the potential to be a really great vaudeville experience for an audience. But in the end, the stakes are pretty low.
If I can jump in.
Of course you may.
Just to piggyback on that, last night we had, am I allowed to curse? Okay.
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I muted myself, but yes, talk freely.
Thank you. Last night we had.
Beware, you're about to hear language that may offend you.
Yes. We had the biggest clusterfuck I've ever seen last night at the theater, and myself and another individual who's a very cool, calm, collected actor were the ones in charge. And the amount of crying that we had backstage, and just complete fear and terror and, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job, you know, over the fact that we had a very large group who were just awful, awful people and making our lives miserable last night. And just keeping things in perspective, I think, was the only thing that got me through last night. And I was one of those people who was laughing at the fact that we had to kick out 50 audience members. And I think I was laughing at it because otherwise I would have cried and crumbled. And it was my job, you know, at that moment as a manager, to make sure that the rest of them felt supported and to put it in perspective of, this is not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. So I just wanted to add to what Curtis was saying of perspective is important and helps.
It sounded like you handled that well.
I did a great job.
She does a lot. I wanted to add to what
you were doing it.
I wanted to add to what Jeff was saying about how you get the feedback from people and that keeps you going. And I think I have a director friend who always tells everyone in his show, it's not about you. This show is about giving an experience to the people who came to pay for this show, and they deserve a good show based on what you are able to do, and you're here for a reason. You have these gifts and they are to be shared with the world, or they do nobody any good. But you don't know the impact you're going to have on someone else until you do it. And generally speaking, I think for most artistic folk, there is somebody out there that is going to be affected by your performance or your words or something like that in a way that you can't even comprehend. And you don't know who you're going to reach and who you're going to touch or who you're going to help. I mean, I used to write on my blog fairly regularly. I've kind of slacked on that in recent times, but I had people reach out to me, people I hadn't talked to in a really long time, who read my blog and said, I feel the same way, and it was so refreshing to read this, and I really want to follow your journey through it because it's really helping me with mine. And I've had people who are strangers say stuff like that to me. And that is always shocking and humbling in a way, but I think it is something to kind of hold on to and to keep help you get through those moments, because there's always going to be trolls, there's always going to be haters, there's always going to be awful people in your life that are going to try and tear you down. But we creative folks usually do have something to say that's going to help or affect someone, or bring up a subject that they maybe haven't heard of before, or there's just so much that we have, and it is a powerful job. But I think also as creatives, we get knocked down by society so much. People don't, I think a lot of the imposter syndrome for me comes from people not taking the whole career I want to do seriously. Like, it's, oh, that's cute, you have this cute little hobby. And so, you know, I had relatives say, so how long are you going to do this? Like, when are you going to just give up and have a real life and stop with this nonsense?
My hairstylist the other day said to me, oh, that's great, so that's what you do. So what do you really want to do?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it's like, this is it. Like, I'm doing it, and I'm trying, or, you know. And I think that all of that, when people like to belittle the arts a lot, they like to, that's the first thing that gets cut with funding. That's, you know, they want to act like it doesn't have an effect, but it has such a huge effect on people in so many ways. And I think it's important as creative folk to remember that you are going to touch people's lives in some way, whether you're making them laugh in a show and giving them a little bit of a reprieve from what's going on in the world, or if you're really touching them with something really heartfelt and that reminds them that, yes, they too can get through this hard time, or that just gives them a release and a reason to cry when they've been holding that in, or if your words are inspiring, or if you write a blog and it makes someone think, I should write something, or maybe I should read this book that touched this person, and then that book touches that person. There's just so much.
I'm glad you brought that up, particularly when you were talking about the arts and funding, because I think there's two sides to the people don't take the career seriously coin. And one of them is that people undervalue art when they're not artists. In other words, we take for granted all the music and television and stuff that we get for very, very little money, and what a huge impact that has on our life. You know, I'm reading Joseph Campbell right now, and if you look back at the history of storytelling and fiction and mythology, that is the #1 way that human beings and their evolving minds contextualize their experiences and give any part of their life value. And so that tradition that used to be, you know, painting on the cave wall is now carried out on televisions and in podcasts and on chats like this and in books, and that has an intrinsic value and has since the beginning of Homo sapiens. And so you don't have to be a full-time artist for music to be important to you, or even playing music. You can be a side gigging musician. You can be an accountant by day and a community theater actor on the weekends, and that can still be a hugely important and impactful part of your life. You know, when people talk about education in the arts and defunding that, you're not just taking away the future violin virtuoso. You're taking away a way that human being can develop their mind in a way and develop emotional resources that they wouldn't otherwise have. So my first point is, yes, art can be important even to a person who isn't doing it professionally. But then on the professional side, I think that bitterness that you're hearing where people don't take it seriously is that they think it's such a long shot. They think the odds are so long. They don't understand the process. They don't see the actors who have been guest starring on network television shows for 35 years and making a living doing it and surviving and doing commercials. And they're not giantly famous. They picture artist equals starving or famous. They don't see any of the stuff in between. And particularly as I've come across other writers in this industry, man, I know many writers who have 5-6 books out and still have a day job. And I know writers who have 12 books out and you've never heard of them, and they're making a fine living and living in a 2-bedroom house with their kids and changing diapers and the whole 9 yards. So I think what I like about these conversations that Curtis is hosting is that it's exposing people to a whole spectrum of what's really going on in the creative arts and the people who are actually doing it every day, as opposed to just the people who are on TMZ, you know?
No, you hit the nail on the head. I've been discouraged my whole life by people who are very well-meaning, but they just don't understand that they really do. They equate the arts and success with fame. And if you don't make it big, then you're nothing. And it doesn't help that there's all those statistics of like most actors that are on SAG don't even make, you know, 100 or whatever. There's just all these things. Only like 0.009% actually make the, you know, and so then they hear that and they think, well, then everyone else isn't surviving at all. And there's just so many levels of success and making a living doing and there's so many things you can do to make a living using these art skills that people don't even think about. I mean, Jessica, how many jobs do you have? All of them based on the arts, but you're making a living.
Right now, 4.
Yeah. So, and you know, I mean, there are kids shows, there are stage shows, there are
Podcasts.
Industrials, there's podcasts, there's industrials for companies that you can act in and be, you know, like there's so many things that people don't realize. Like, and it's so silly because it's like, well, at your day job where you're an accountant and they have these training videos, who do you think those people are? Like those are also actors. Like everything, like there's so many things you can do with those skills, not even in the performing arts, but using them to speak to people and public relations, or doing tours of something, or just so many ways, Jeff, that you know of being a storyteller. There's like, you've had a whole bunch of careers involving storytelling, and the skills that takes are very valuable. And so yeah, they don't value it, and they don't understand that you don't have to be a household name to be successful and to be happy and to make a good living. And so they really are well-meaning, but it's a dream killer, man. When you these people who are like, oh, well, you'll never, and then you think, well, I'm never gonna make it, you know, and the odds are against me, and really the odds are ever in your favor. Like if you just really do what you love to do, a lot of doors do open. But when you aim for just this one narrow little path, it is going to be difficult. It is going to be hard, but there's so many other doors, and people don't know that, and they don't encourage you based on that as they really should. So I think that is a huge point, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's totally true.
I want to talk about the pillows behind you because they're like the most beautiful pillows.
Thank
like
you.
1960s, and I'm taking drugs.
I like these pillows. They were in storage for a long time, and our walls are really bare right now. So I wanted to make sure there was some sort of colorful thing behind me. I'm
thinking of painting this wall just like green screen, and then just putting really bad low resolution photos of like part of the Eiffel Tower behind it, and then just saying nothing during the next chat.
I think put an aquarium.
Oh, that'd
be rad.
Yeah. See, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna paint this wall green, Curtis. We're gonna hang it.
So it's funny because novel writing is such a weird career, and by that what I mean is there's that tip of the iceberg that you see. You know, the book signings, the stuff that I post on Instagram, and it's funny because earlier this week I was like, I don't post anything on social media that has anything to do with like the actual job of writing. It's always like, hey, I'm at a library event, which is like my light at the end of the tunnel of just like loneliness and self-loathing and deleting things. So I posted like, I went live on Facebook because I've been inspired by all Curtis's crazy live stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna go live. It's like went live and I was like typing.
Yeah.
And like,
and you're looking very serious. You had these very serious looks on your face, and I can see your face like, moving back and forth.
I look serious, but I don't look as angry as I feel. Maybe that's why I was a terrible actor, is because how I look on the outside doesn't like equal what. But I think the other thing that people don't talk about, and it's funny because I've had other authors talk about the things that they post and don't post on social media, and the things that they say and don't say. Like one of the things you're not supposed to say as an author is the book that you're reading that is my debut novel is not only not the first book that I wrote, but it's not the first book that I sold. There's this big push to appear like you popped out of the womb a genius, and the first thing that you vomited onto a page like a hairball was, the great American novel. And I'm like, no. I wrote and tried to get an agent, and then finally got an agent and sold. And I talk about that at talks. And you can see these college students that want to write that they're just like, like, oh, the pressure's off. And I think we need to talk more about how it's okay to like be fallible. I think that there's also this thing of, oh my God, you have a book published. Now you have this, reset your life, and now your life begins with the date your book was published, and everything after that becomes protect it, protect your brand and the sovereignty of your brand, and and how, you know, people think of you as successful, so you have to project that image. And I'm like, I will go to a conference and speak, and I will talk for 20 of my 60 minutes about failure. The people that don't want to hear that, they just don't hear it. It just doesn't land on them. They're willing to, and then the other people who are really interested in doing it for a living, they're like, oh, okay. And so I think we need to humanize being an artist more. I think we need to take back the way media sort of becomes like an echo chamber of success, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I want to hear more about like the 60 plays that, you know, Meryl Streep didn't get the part for before she got famous. You know, I want to hear more about that, because to me, that's more inspiring than watching someone accept an Oscar.
I so agree.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the next ones we do is the myth of the overnight success.
Oh God, I don't want to talk about that myself.
Well, maybe the next one I arrange, and I'll get other people to talk about the myth of the overnight success. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Funny you bring up Meryl Streep. She recently posted something on social media, just a picture of her 40 years ago standing in a subway train, and she had just left an audition for
King Kong.
Was it King Kong? Okay.
King Kong, 76
and she had and she had been told that she was not attractive enough to be in movies and she would never be a success. And now she's got more Academy Awards than any living person.
Yeah. So. It just goes to show you nobody knows anything. I mean, I always remember that J.K. Rowling sent Harry Potter to 13 publishers, and talk about, like, I want to interview those publishers and have them go like, yeah, this wasn't the right book for us at the right time. Like, I don't regret my choice. Or, you know, the ones that are like, yeah, I ruined my career by saying no to that book, and I hate myself and Harry Potter.
On a related note, back in the 90s, during the huge Beatles like resurgence, they actually did a PBS special about people who didn't sign the Beatles. And it was just a series of people going, we didn't know. It was all cover songs. That's all it was. They were just English cover song players. We didn't, how would we know? And they got very defensive. They didn't sign the Beatles.
Oh, one other thing, back on the actual topic that we did this for.
I was about to get us back there, yes.
Well, oh, sorry. Oh,
okay. You can do it too.
Undermining your moderating.
Really, I feel like it's going to work out.
I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I have discovered that I am far poorer at judging what I am good at than I think I am. I'm getting better at it. But so I have to remind myself when I judge that something, because I mean, I'm in a writing group with 4 other writers. 2 of them are published, 2 of them are not counting me. And I will present a chapter that I think, oh, this is gonna get panned. And universally they're like, yes. And then I'll write something else that I really think lands, and they'll go, no. And so I have to remind myself that when I think I'm a fake, I'm a terrible judge. So like, I'm just a terrible, and that doesn't mean that when I'm writing something, I don't know whether I like it or not. But you have to, you know, when you're writing or creating something for someone else to experience, you have to get feedback at some point. That doesn't mean you can't follow your own inner star or whatever, but you're a terrible judge of whether it's good or not. You really are. And
you're too close to it.
What makes artists successful is that they keep producing. And the stuff that doesn't catch on never gets seen, and the stuff that does gets lauded. And that, you know, and for actors, that takes place in auditions. You have 12 auditions, you're right for 6 of the roles, you shank or sort of don't show up the way you should for 5 of those auditions. The other one, they're like, yes, you're the right person, or this other person wasn't right, and you end up, and then the role's good. And that's what ends up out there. For writers, it's manuscripts that never get seen. So for musicians, it's songs that never make it past the notebook. And so I think we also have to say, like, success isn't, I hate this thing about, oh, just, you know, fail until you succeed. No, just keep producing. I mean, and get feedback and incorporate that feedback into what you produce, but keep producing more, write more words, write more songs, go on more auditions, write more plays, produce more, to me. And obviously you have to have an improvement loop in there.
But that's the thing. Success is actually equal to quantity of quality work. And as long as you consistently produce
I guess what I'm saying is people fool themselves into believing that they are a good judge of the quality of their work.
Right. But you can't. You just got to put it out there and then see what happens.
Yeah. And then
produce.
Yeah, produce. And it's funny because the number one question I get from young writers is, how do I get an agent? And the question I always come back with is, well, have you finished writing a novel? And they go, no. And I go, well,
cart before the horse.
If you and it's a question that keeps coming up, and I get it. When I was a young actor, I was more, you know, I had the same thing of like, there's something missing between me and success. And my thing is, I was like, let's bring it back to the work. Bring it back to the work. And, you know, the most frustrating thing about being in 7K was...
By the way, 7K is Jeff Garvin's old alt-rock band, which is amazing and available on Spotify. In fact, you've heard some of their music in the films that I've made and on the shorts that are available on this very channel.
I just got a check for like 8 cents from Spotify, so thanks for that, Spotify.
I would like to say that Renee and I are probably responsible for 7 of those 8 cents.
So yeah, if you go to Jeff Garvin,
it's really good to work out too.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
If you go to jeffgarvinbooks.com/music, you can see all the 7K stuff. But one of the frustrating things about being in 7K was the ship. I had built the ship and launched it, and like no one was on the ship. And by no one, I mean not enough people cared about it or were attracted to it to make it a financially viable thing. And the frustrating thing was that I just was unwilling to look at, you know, if you build it, they will come. That's the truth. If you are doing something that must be seen, must be heard, that people are just irresistibly attracted to, that audience will appear. It's a magnetic force. And it took me, you know, 40 years of my life to do something that had that level of magnet. And I had to give up a lot of notions about myself and my work and who I was and what I was good at to find that. But it was really a tough thing to go, okay, like I've taken this as far as I've gone, and it's not, you know, to get to the next level, it would have to become something that I'm not capable of or willing to create. That's a really humbling thing. And I think that was the end of 7K was a real turning point for me in terms of getting realistic about what my skill set really was, what qualities I had that were competitive with other people. Like, for example, as an actor, I never really got what I looked like and where that was going to land in a casting role. I was going for roles that were outside of, you know, I should have been the guy with the headset on in NCIS, just like, you know, okay, they're coming, or here's the address, you know, like that's where I probably would, if I had, you know, stayed on that, I could have had more of a, figured out where that, with a funny clerk. I was always the sarcastic clerk. Why I didn't just go, oh, I'm the guy behind the counter that makes rude comments to the customers. I can make a career out of that, right? I
know I did.
I was trying to find my spot. Right. There you go. Well, you were the guy who took the one-liner and turned it into a series regular.
That was the plan.
Yeah. So the other thing is it takes a lot of experimentation and failure and risk for you to like get those pingbacks from the universe, those sonar pingbacks, to find where you are as a creative person. And you can only do that by producing and taking risks. So slowing down the risk-taking of the production does you no good. None.
We have run for about 50 minutes, which is a really solid conversation. Good work, everybody. What I'd like to do, though, is to kind of wrap up. This is obviously something that we've all dealt with. I'd like to go down the line. I'd like to have everybody kind of have a chance to pick that one thing that they think has been the biggest hurdle for them, and then how they've been dealing with getting over that hurdle. And Jeff, since you've kind of commented on some of these, I'd like to start with you, and then we'll go to Dan, Jessica, Renee, and I'll wrap up.
Biggest hurdle in terms of imposter syndrome? I think it's being willing to sit down and write something that I've never written before, to write in a genre that I've never written before, to write a character whose experience I haven't personally shared, and being willing to accept that I might be able to do it even though I don't believe that I can. So for me, the hurdle is actually sitting down to write. And I think how I deal with that is that the psychological anguish of not writing and not pursuing is greater than the fear at this point.
Solid. Thank you very much, sir. Dan, what gets your gander, and then how do you get that goose?
Well, the gander part, I know. I'm not so much I figured out how to get the goose, but for me, it's recognizing and accepting my own accomplishments. Anytime anybody offers me a compliment on one of my book thump articles or on any task that I did at my professional job, I'm very quick to dismiss it. And you know, I appreciate the compliment, but I'm not one who takes it and then puts it as a feather in my cap. It's just I'm very quick to it's not a big deal. How I overcome that though, that's what I'm still working on.
Progress is always something that's in process. So that's worthy. That's worthy, man.
I think it's important to make a list of the things that either make a list of your accomplishments or a list of things that you are good at. And I know Jeff had previously spoken about how he personally feels like he's a bad judge of what he's good at. But some of us can do it, or just give it a try. And that might help you recognize what you do well. And
there's a plus side to that though too, because I'm probably willing to try things that other people would be like, no, I'm going to be terrible at that.
Both sides of the coin. Jessica, what are you facing, and how are you slaying your dragon to get you back on brand?
Using my own words with, I love it.
I have hoisted you on your own petard.
I think my biggest hurdle is just because I'm on the younger end of the spectrum as far as like my artistic career, and I think it's just accepting. 4 years out of college, you know, it takes a long time.
Wait! I'm kicking you off this panel completely because 4 years out of college, you haven't even had enough time to really fail yet. I mean, good gravy.
But I think that my failure, it's why this conversation's been so interesting, because I think that my biggest failure has been what's happening in my own head. Like my biggest hurdle is just is actually accepting, yes, this is what I have chosen to do. Yes, this is what I am accepting that I am good at. It's what I love, and it's what I need to give to my community because I was given gifts and I need to use them. And when people are like, "Oh yeah, you're a singer, you're an actress," I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, no," like, and I will downplay it. And I think that that is my biggest thing is recognizing, okay, these people do recognize that I am accomplishing things and taking that in. And a tool that I've recently just started using is actually evidence journaling that I've kind of discovered, which is when I have one of those conversations of, yes, oh my gosh, that song was amazing. Can I book you to sing at this event? I write it down. I put a date and I write it down. So I have this little book that's with me at all times that I can go back and use as a reference of sort of like a list of, okay, this is where I am succeeding. This is where other people are recognizing that what I am doing is worthy, and taking that in. It's been monumental in the last like 6-7 months in helping me get over my own whatever. I'm not good with. So that's my tool. That's my tool as of late.
That's the soundbite.
That's the soundbite. Yeah, for real. It's perfect.
That needs to be the that needs to be the thumbnail of the just Jessica going.
That'll get lots of views. Yeah.
We're gonna get something. That's for sure. Letters are coming. Renee, what are you facing and doing?
My hardest hurdles, my highest hurdles are also in my own head, essentially. I think that's kind of just par for the course for this kind of imposter syndrome. Feeling like I don't look a certain way, or that I'm getting too old. Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one. You're too old. You haven't done enough yet. Why are you still trying? Like, do we need to change tactics? What's what are you going to do now? Like, what's going to be the next thing? But the way I get over that particular one is that, well, I am getting older. And so what am I going to start new on? Like, I better just stay the course and see what happens. And I think that also recognizing through a lot of journaling, like Jessica, just different types of journaling and reading interesting books like You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, which I think is a neat name, and doing that sort of thing, and remembering, going back to the War of Art and those kinds of things, they all really kind of help me to get over myself and to keep me on track. And much like Jeff mentioned, getting feedback from people, especially strangers. If my friends like something I do, that's great, and I'm really happy, and that makes me feel good.
How messed up is that, by the way?
What?
How messed up is that?
Yeah, you just don't it because you think, well, they love me, and so they're just, oh, Renee's doing a cute thing. But when, I guess I should say, friends and family maybe who aren't in the business, when they love it, it's kind of like, oh, well, you know, you just love me. When people are in a creative field and I find that their feedback is more specific, and that helps me to feel more like it's a little more genuine. It means a little more. Also, yeah, when strangers come up to me after a show or see me somewhere and say, oh, I saw you in this thing and you're really good. Or a friend of mine reposted a video I did a couple years ago just recently, and it was really sweet that she did that, and that made me feel good because she didn't have to do that. She just did it. And a couple strangers were like, oh, that was really good on her page about it, and that made me like, oh my gosh, thank you, I'm so glad you liked it, because it was a big risk for me to make that, and it was a thing that, you know, when I'm doing a musical or a play, I'm doing someone else's words and work, so that takes a little pressure off, that if you didn't like it, maybe you just don't like that. I didn't come up with the idea. I was just presenting it to you. But this was something that was my own concept, my own thing that I wanted to put out there, and
Was it the Little Mermaid?
Liked it. Was it the what? The Little Mermaid
Little
song?
Mermaid.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was nice. It was really nice, especially because I didn't work that with a voice coach. I kind of did it in a day, and I didn't feel like it was my best vocals. When I hear it now, I'm like, ooh, I could have worked that a little bit better. But people like it, and they aren't saying, oh, that one note sounded a little. They just like it, and so that's something to remember, is that, like you were saying, Jeff, you don't know what's going to land with people. You need the feedback, and you have to put it out there to get the feedback. So yeah, for me, journaling and really taking to heart the feedback that I get has been, I think, the biggest help in getting over just being afraid to do anything. And I think you've got to stay true to who you are too. If you try to be like someone else, it's not going to work. And there's always an audience for who you are and what you bring to the table. And so stay true to yourself. Listen to the feedback, but stay true to who you are and bring what is uniquely you out. And that's been a really hard lesson for me that I've learned over the years, very slowly, but I feel like it's really starting to sink in.
Excellent. We're going to have to mute you. As I mentioned before, fear is a thing that I am very familiar with. And because I grew up in this industry and started working at a different time when getting a job in entertainment was a very different thing. I find that my biggest hurdle is waiting for permission. I'm always waiting for somebody else to say, yes, you get to do this, or here is the money that you get to do this with, or you have this part. I was waiting for permission for a very long time. And how am I defeating this hurdle? One of those ways was trying to be a producer for 10 years, but instead of actually getting rid of asking for permission, all I did was transfer it to a different job set. And that got even more frustrating. So instead, Rene and I made the rather dramatic move to come to Portland. And as I'm discovering now, after being here for 2 months, I kind of tricked myself into thinking that nothing's going to be all that different. We're still going to be asking for permission. We're just going to be doing it in a different space where permission is easier to get. And instead, what I've discovered is subconsciously, what I really wanted to do is exactly what we're doing. I wanted to take away permission and just start doing things, which is what we've been doing. I don't know that a dramatic out-of-state move is for everybody. But saying that in a half-joking way, there is a reason that New York and Los Angeles have thousands of people that show up every day. These are people that are taking the risk to do something. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But in the end, I think my final advice toward my own hurdles is you have to be willing to take the risk. And even in failure, taking the risk is worth it. So there we go. We killed an hour. How you like that? As we do whenever we finish one of these conversations, how do we find you guys on the internet so we can get more of your work? Mr. Zarzana.
Bookthump.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram as @bookthump.
Thank you very much. Miss Jessica, how can we find you?
Ooh, you can find me on Instagram at Jessica Hayes, Hayes, Jessica Hayes Music. I'm on Instagram. You can also check out my blog at yoursaddragon.com.
Mr. Garvin.
Hold on, I'm finding Jessica on Instagram.
Could you? Well, then I'm moving on to Rene. Yes. Rene, where can we find your stuff online?
I'm on Instagram at Renee's Revolution, and I'm on Twitter at Rene Bordelon. And my bottom third is gone. I lost that at some point during this conversation, but I'm sure Curtis has it in the words that will be accompanying this when he posts it later. But Rene Bordelon at Twitter, or at Rene Bordelon on Twitter, and at Renee's Revolution on Instagram.
Excellent.
I am jeffgarvinbooks.com. You can find me on Instagram and the Face, Twit, and all of those places from there.
Thank you, sir. Excellent. As usual, you can find me at curtisanderson.com. All of the links and everything that was described will be down below in the description. And don't forget to check out the Andalon Patreon page. Whoa! We've been getting more and more people, and people are signing up for the merchandise tier, which means that Rene and I are going to have to produce merchandise. So there we go. So look forward to some Frankie merchandise in the near future, and maybe some other things popping up. Thank you all again.
Buy all your merch. I'm so excited.
Please do. T-shirts, books, posters. This is happening. We're not waiting for permission anymore. Our next major live event is coming up in August, and it will be all about storytelling. We'll be featuring Mr. Garvin again, and some other storytelling folks from the land of film, television, and the internet. We're going to cover everything.
Although I may drop out of that because I'm feeling like kind of a fake.
I'm going to hit you with a stick. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We really appreciate everybody who is watching today. All of our new subscribers, thank you very much. Don't hesitate to tell a friend. And we will see you next time.